Hey everybody, Tom here with Hidden Beats, and today we're talking with Mr. Stephen Ryan. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Tom. How about yourself?
Pretty good. It's a nice day to have some fun conversations with some people.
For sure.
So we're here today to talk about you, about your music, and just kind of what you do in the world. But for those who are new, can you give us a little intro about yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I'm a singer-songwriter from Southern Ontario here in Canada, and I've been playing music for about 15, 16 years professionally, so to speak. And over the last 10 or so, I started recording myself as well as other artists in my studio. This is a much nicer space than the studio started out as. It was originally just in my living room beside my couch and at one point in my bedroom.
Hmm.
But here we are today, and I record and produce all my own music as well as some other artists as well.
Nice. It sounds awesome. How did you get into music early on? Like, did you have a musical family? Someone introduce you to something?
Yeah, so for me, it was I moved to a new city when I was 5 years old with my family, and just a couple houses up the street was a guy named Quentin Carter, who to this day is still my drummer. But
Nice.
his dad, Jeff, was a musician, was in bands growing up. So I went over to Quentin's house, and Quentin would play the drums, and his dad would play guitar or piano, and my sibling was there and would play bass. And I said, I don't play an instrument, and I was 5 or 6 years old and Quentin's dad said, "Well, you can just sing." And I was like, "I don't know how to sing." He said, "Anyone can sing." So
Hmm.
that's kind of where it all started for me.
Nice. Is there some early inspirations that you were listening to that kind of sparked your, I'm gonna do music, I want to sound like this person?
Funny enough, my early inspirations sound absolutely nothing like the music I make. It would have been the first shows we would have played as bands would have been all Blink 182 and Green Day covers.
Yeah.
Funny enough. And then maybe some into a little bit more of the pop world with like All American Rejects and things like that. And then I got into stuff like U2 and Jeff Buckley and other bands that were a little less pop punk as high school went on.
Hmm. I mean, all those names are still on my playlist now, so I can
Yeah,
definitely vibe with that for sure.
that's awesome.
So who inspires your current sound? Is, we talked about the other ones, but who's now doing it?
Yeah, so the weird thing is, as much as maybe some of the things I listen to in the more the pop singer-songwriter realm, like the Script and the Fray and bands like that might seep into the sound, but my last two albums have more just been discovering who I am as a sound because
Hmm.
in the past with working with other producers and things like that, especially when I was younger, I would give them references and because they're great engineers and great producers, the music would end up sounding like those references. But ultimately that's not what we're trying to do with music. We're trying to be who we are and put that through the speakers. So being able to record my own music gave me the freedom to spend countless days and weeks at a time trying to figure out what I sounded like without all the influences. And
Hmm.
that's kind of an amalgamation of, I guess, all of the things I listen to.
Yeah, I mean, you pull pieces from what you experience and then make it your own. It's kind of
Yeah.
the way art should be, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Now you have new music coming out on March 8th with the extended album of Life, Love, and Everything After.
Yeah.
What's the story behind that? I know we're looking at the extended release now.
Yeah. So essentially, to answer that question, I kind of have to go back to the album before it, which was called Light of Day.
Okay.
And the reason I released that album was I spent, after my first album in 2014, I spent probably 6 years of my life either signed into different deals or things like that, where I thought this music was eventually going to come out. And then after all this time of me not necessarily being in control of what I released or didn't release, once I was no longer under contract with anybody, I was I was worried. I was like, I thought this music would never see the light of day because it had been 7 years since I released anything. So
Hmm.
that album was called Light of Day just to get that stuff finally off my chest and out of my system. And then this time around, I had a hard time. I was trying to bring the album all the way down to say 12 songs, and I got it to 15, and then I released it, and I felt what's the point in having songs sit on my hard drive that might reach somebody, even if it only reaches one person, one of those extra songs.
Hmm.
It's doing no good on my hard drive, and music isn't meant to just sit in a locked box or something like that. So
Yeah.
I decided to put the rest out.
No, that's awesome. And I mean, it's always, you never know what's going to hit. So if even if it reached
Yeah.
one person or all of a sudden you're surprised and it reaches, millions and you're like, holy crap, what happened there?
Yeah, all of my most successful songs were not singles, were not songs I was pushing. It's just an algorithm somewhere or some people on one platform started listening to it or using the sound and they took off organically. And it made me realize, you know what? Maybe me and my friends and the people I work with, we don't know what people want. We should just let the people decide what they want.
Yeah, it's really hard now with the digital age of music to just know what's going to hit sometimes.
100%.
So you're talking about trying to kind of bring the album down to, a certain number of tracks. What's the process like when you're trying to go through all that? Like, how do you cut a song that you think might be good or anything?
Yeah, a lot of time throughout my years, I kind of do it. I try to do it by committee, and I will either send a demo link out of, in the past, it's been maybe 20 or 25 songs, and I say, hey, give me your top 10. And then kind of the top 10 that seems the most consistent, I'll go with, but then I'll put one or two or three more tracks that I'm like, well, these were important to me, so they might be important to somebody else.
Hmm.
And I do versions of that. And sometimes we'd have 40, 50 tracks that we were choosing from. And kind of this time around, again, I got a consensus on what songs some people thought were best and some of the people I'm working with. And then I just kept saying, but I can't leave this one off and I can't
Yeah.
leave that one off. And the album to me was this concept of life, love, and everything after. And so it had, the original release had 13 tracks on it. And then I said, well, the last track is everything after. I was like, I should really have a life track and a love track. So I created an intro track and an interlude track called Life, Love, and then the last song was Everything After.
Hmm. No, I mean that's an interesting way to think about it because like I'm not a musician, I'm not putting things together like that, but you're trying to build something out of this and it's cool to see how you're going about doing that.
Yeah. Well, and then with the extended version, I had these other songs that I was like, I want to put these on an extended version at some point. And then I realized, well, this is kind of weird because we're closing the story with everything after, and then I'm opening it back up, and then conceptually, it doesn't feel finished. So
Hmm.
that's when I wrote an outro song called The End, which kind of loops it back around.
Nice. No, I like that.
Yeah.
Now, how do you think your music has evolved? Like you talked about your first album in 2024. You've had steady releases on things like Spotify since 2019. How have you evolved musically going through the decades?
Yeah, so yeah, the first album in 2014, I recorded with an amazing producer here in Canada, Dan Broadbeck. Um, and if it wasn't for doing that album with him, I would have never been able to record and produce my own stuff because I learned so much through that process. But what I did learn is that I didn't know how to communicate what I wanted to sound like without using references. So that
Okay.
forced me to spend all that time looking into who am I as a musician and what do I sound like. And then on top of that, I think the biggest difference would be when I was younger, all of my songwriting was, unless I got hit by some crazy divine inspiration, I couldn't write music. It had to be inspired by something, and I would let myself get this writer's block for months at a time because I didn't have the right inspiration. Whereas I learned over time as I started flexing that writing muscle and writing with and for other people that I could just sit down and write. And as I learned how to be an actual songwriter, instead of just hoping for songs to pop into my head, I was able to write about deeper things than just the relationship I just had or the new relationship I was in or just very surface level things.
Hmm. Now, is it, well, I mean, you were having trouble with trying to pull those things out of the air, but do you find it easier to write something that's personal to you or that you're just having a story and you're trying to mold the story to how you want?
I love that question because as far as ease goes, I think it's so much easier to write a story that has nothing to do with me because the outcome has no bearing on my life. Whereas when I'm writing about something personal to me, it has to meet that standard. And it also, you're afraid because you're going, well, I'm also letting this part of me out into the world and letting people into that. So how much of that am I comfortable letting out? Whereas the other ones, you just say, oh, that was about nothing. That wasn't about me. Whereas when they're about you, you at some point have to answer that question of, yeah, this was happening in my life, or that happened in my life. And I feel like the best thing I've ever done was stop worrying about what people will ask me when they hear certain lyrics I write, because again, it might be hard to put that out in the world, but somebody needs to hear it.
No, that I think that's actually a great way to put that because everyone's going to take something from a song, and especially if it's something more personal to you, you're putting that extra bit into it because you're trying to be a little bit more concise with your thoughts and make sure it's exactly what you want.
100%.
No, I like that. That's a good thought for sure. Now, what do you think it takes to stand out in the music industry today with the way, I mean, it's there's a million ways to get songs now. It's hard to get everyone under your belt.
Yeah, I would say the way to stick out now, sadly, because the when I first started in the industry, I mean, I'm not so young as some people that are still going at it, but I mean, when I really started, uh, probably 15 years ago, it was all about cultivating that brand that maybe had nothing to do with who you were,
Hmm.
and only showing parts of you and your life that fit that brand. And as social media has made people more accessible, authenticity is valued over almost anything. And
Hmm.
you'll see people, even massive people like Louis Capaldi and stuff like that, where their online persona was just them messing around on the internet. And
Yeah.
I think people respect that so much more. So it's very difficult to go from that 10 years of trying to say, this is who I am as a brand or who people told me that the audiences would want to see, and switching over to just like letting me be myself. And if I feel like doing something that's not music related or it's comedy related or whatever on my social media, feeling comfortable enough to do that, because I think just that authenticity is what gets you the most amount of people.
And I think the idea of being yourself on social media is really, really hitting home in a lot of different ways now. Like I look back, John Cena from wrestling did an interview recently. I think it was on like Logan Paul's podcast where he talks about his Instagram
Yeah.
and he just posts stuff with no explanation and it's the most random things, but it's him. It's what he's looking at that moment or something that kind of strikes him, but it's just all over the place. It's nothing to do with wrestling really.
Yeah, and that's honestly when I follow people, I if they've got a song coming out, great. I want to hear that. But what I want to see more than anything is what they're doing in their life,
Hmm.
and who they are as a person, because I'm already sold on the music.
Yeah, if
So
you're
I
listening to
mean,
someone, you're there for a reason.
yeah, so I mean, I'm not following them to also listen to the music. That's why I have Apple or Spotify, or I have their vinyl or whatever. So yeah, and I think that's harder for more independent artists like myself, because you're still trying to grow your audience so much that we tend to push the music maybe more than we should, and we should be spending a lot of time just being ourselves on socials.
I still have that problem now, like with hidden beats. I didn't put my face out there for
Yeah.
years. Nobody knew Hidden Beats was me. Like in this, like I'm based in Ottawa,
Yeah.
and I can go to all these shows and things like that. And I'm because I'm a photographer also, so I'm shooting. They're like, "Oh, who are you shooting for?" I'm like, "Oh, Hidden Beats," and they're like, "Oh yeah, I know that." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, that's me. Like I own that." And they're like, "Oh, damn, no." And it's hard to have that balance, and I still think I'm struggling with that now with how big we've got. Like
Yeah.
I have 30 people that work under Hidden Beats now, so it's
Wild.
trying to actually manage all that stuff and get yourself out there. It's really interesting, and I could definitely see how that would be a similar kind of feel for a musician.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is you are the entire brand, and like your interest in music in your mind, and the questions you ask people, and the things you facilitate via interviews and stuff like that. That's always been the brand, but it's
Hmm.
just weird that we always our faces or our personas we feel are so secondary to that.
It was funny. I was covering a show here, and I had someone flew out from Winnipeg to cover
Yep.
a show in Ottawa, and we're doing that same thing, talking in the pit, and they're like, "Oh, who you shooting for Hidden Beats?" He's like, "I just met a guy who shoots for Hidden Beats in Winnipeg." And it's like, "Yeah, that's me again." Like, that's
Yeah.
still I'm the one putting all that together. So
Yeah.
it's kind of crazy to see how people can pick those pieces out of the world now.
Yeah. That's wild.
Hmm. I'm curious, as a musician, I mean, there's lots of things you do to keep grounded outside of music. I see you're a Toronto fan. You got that
Yep.
jersey in the background, and our rivals was the Sens here. And
Yeah. Let's not talk about this season.
oh, I mean, both sides aren't doing great by any standards. But I'm curious, what's some of the other things you do outside of music to keep yourself kind of level-headed?
Yeah. Oh man. Sometimes it seems like nothing, but I am one of those people that uh I guess you'd call a jack of all trades or whatever. Because like I built this studio. It came as just a shell. I did all the electrical,
Mm,
everything
nice.
I do. I did for a few years renovations and stuff, and I flipped some houses with one of my buddies. Um, I kind of there's nothing to me when I see something, I just assume I can do it because I'm like, well, people can do that, and I'm a person, so I can probably do that.
Hmm.
But the problem is, I never usually focused enough on anything to get to that level of mastery necessarily. I'm always
Yep.
just like, I can do this enough to do it. That's plenty good.
I'm
So
the same way as that.
yeah, so I've got a lot of stuff, and I do. My wife does some woodworking in her shop and stuff, so I help her out with that. Yeah, I'm a little bit all over the map, but on top of the music stuff, the other side of music, I do record other artists and write for other artists and things like that as well.
So it's a good way to spread yourself out and kind of just not be super focused on one thing.
100%, yeah.
Now, I ask some fun questions with every interview just to pick your brain a little bit more, and especially on first time interviews. This one is my favorite one, and it's going to make you think the most.
All
What's
right.
one thing you think should be asked more in an interview that's not asked enough?
Ooh, I'm gonna have to think about this because I I might have gone towards that question you already asked, which I've never actually been asked by anybody, which was the is it easier to write from your own perspective or something else? Um, let's see, something that doesn't get asked enough.
I look
I
at
would
this two ways because you
yeah,
could be watching an interview and with someone that you admire as an artist, for instance, and I wonder what they do in this case, or just generally what you think, someone's favorite food is. Could be anything.
yeah. I would definitely go in the vein of questions that have nothing to do with music, similar to that, or similar to like if you could pick a superpower, what would
Mm,
it be? Like those type of weird questions, I think give you such more of an insight into who somebody is than you really notice.
mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, something like that. I like that question in a lot of interviews is the what superpower would you choose? Because it gives you if they want to be invisible, that really tells you something about maybe either their confidence or whether that in their life or anything like that. But yeah, I'm final answer.
Now, one of my favorite ones in the completely off topic realm like that is, do you think a hot dog is a sandwich?
Ooh, I so I'm a little bit of middle ground, but I'm not going to fence it
Okay.
because what I would want to say is I'm not going to yell at somebody who tells me it's an open face sandwich,
Okay.
which in my opinion is not the same as your standard. When I think sandwich, that's closed, holding it
Mhm.
like this.
Yeah.
Whereas something like a Philly steak, you might get where it's a little open and you kind of have to hold it so that it doesn't fall out if you
Yeah.
held it. But I'm going not a sandwich. Final answer.
I mean, a lot of people, so this is the great debate question. A lot of people have such polarizing thoughts about it, and I'm kind of the same as you. It meets the criteria for so many different things. It's like, how can you call it a sandwich? Because it's kind of not, but it kind of is. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's an interesting one for sure. Now, I'm curious, what might be something on your go-to playlist that people might not expect you to listen to?
Okay. Um, I would say I already mentioned some of the other stuff. So I'm gonna give you 2 answers just because they're very opposite, I would think.
Okay.
Um, One would be a band called The Used. I don't know if you
Yeah, I know the
know,
used. Yeah.
was it used to be a big into The Used and still listen to them a lot. And then another would be, Jeff Buckley's entire release, Grace,
Okay. Yeah.
which is a much different vibe. I actually have, the album tattooed
Nice.
on my arm here. So very different sides, but those I think would be maybe more surprising to people.
Yeah, that's when you're looking at someone, you think maybe they listen to only this type of stuff, and that's why they're in that genre. But
Yeah,
someone who enjoys music, it's you can pick out so many different things. A good song is a good song somewhere.
exactly.
Like I use the idea of I have Nicki Minaj Super Bass on my playlist, and I can go front to back with that no problem.
Yep.
I don't exactly look like the guy who's out there popping around to that song every time. So it's interesting for sure.
Yeah, I'll go from Dua Lipa to Johnny Cash to The Used to U2. Like
Hmm.
I'm all over that. But like you said, good music is good music. A good song is a good song. And even if they're artists that I haven't traditionally listened to, if they come up with a good song, I'm gonna listen to that song.
Yeah, exactly. I found a guy recently who's I think he's based in Germany. His He goes by the Dark Tenor. He's like an operatic singer who puts these power ballad opera pieces in, but mixes in like a Beethoven symphony into it. And he just has
Oh,
like this
cool.
very dynamic way he does things. And I came across one of his songs, and now I've got 5 or 6 on my playlist because just the way he plays with the music is so interesting.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Hmm. Now, fun one that people might not, always think about. Who plays you in the movie of your life?
Ooh. I feel like this would have been so much easier 10 years ago when I was like much more actively watching a lot of movies and films and stuff like that. I think it depends. I'm one of those guys that in a 3-year time frame, I might fluctuate 50 to 60 pounds one way
I
or the
mean,
other.
I'm the same way. I'm a big boy, so it can go up and down pretty quick.
Yeah. So I mean, when when I'm kind of at the stage where I'm at, where I'm a little bit more comfy, maybe let's call it a little bit more comfy.
Hmm.
Um, what's the guy from? He is in Workaholics. I don't know if you know
I
that
I
show.
I know I can't pull names out of the top
I
of my head
I'm
though.
gonna do a big no-no on an interview, and I'm gonna Google what this guy's name is because the people need to know.
Hmm.
Um, I would probably go. Oh, Adam Devine is
Oh,
his
okay,
name.
yes,
He
yes.
was also in Pitch Perfect, I think, and a couple
Yeah.
other things. I think he could pull it off, and I I think he'd be good at. I'm a lot crazier and sillier behind the scenes than sometimes I let on. And if
Hmm.
people ever want to see that side of me, because who people filming themselves being funny feels really weird to me
Me
sometimes.
too. I'm right with you on that.
But if you want to see that, if you follow any of the people that I record in my studio, they're always posting videos of me being a little bit ridiculous. Because
Nice.
again, that it's happening in the moment, and then people are videoing you. It feels a lot. It's natural because it's just what you're doing when you hang out with people. But when I'm
Hmm.
by myself, I feel really weird. But I think Adam Devine uh, is the guy I would choose right now. That or I've gotten but he's older than me, but Chris Pine or things like that.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
who
I
knows?
could I could see both, but Adam, I think, would probably, because he's such a good musician too with what he does. Like he can sing
Yeah,
so much. Like he's really good musically. And
exactly.
if you're as goofy and fun as he is just in general, like it probably seems like a perfect fit.
Yeah, that's another awesome question because I hadn't really thought of that one before.
Those ones always make you think because it's something that comes out of left field for sure.
Yeah.
Now, this one I always like, especially on for my first time interviews, is as a musician, if you were introducing yourself to someone for the very first time, what would be the first song of your catalog that they should listen to?
Oh man. This gets so much harder as the catalog grows because there's
right?
more
Because
than
and it's who's your favorite child, basically, is it?
yeah. And there's I've got once this is out, there's more than 50 songs that I have released at this point. Um, right now, I'm gonna have to go with, and this would change. I'm not gonna go with. I would normally. It's usually whoever's the child you just had, which would be my
Hmm.
single that got released a little bit ago with you. But I'm gonna go with a song called "Take It Out on Me,"
Okay.
which is kind of about being that punching bag people need and understanding that when these people take this stuff out on you, it's has almost always nothing to do with you,
Hmm.
and having a little bit of foresight to see this person's going through something in their life, and if I have to be that person in the moment that they're losing their mind on, so that they don't do something even sillier than that or don't break down, then I'm fine to be that person
Yeah.
right now. And I've grown to a point where I'm not taking that as seriously when people do lash out at me.
I mean, I think that's a good thing too. So everyone needs someone like that in their lives. So there's always crazy going on everywhere. So if you can be that person for someone, it helps a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I like that. And those this question it changes. Like if we were to come back in a year, you might have two different completely answers again.
Oh, if you were to talk to me tomorrow, I might have a different answer.
That's why it's a fun one because it's very introspective in the moment, but then
Yeah,
it's not necessarily a long-term thing.
definitely.
Now, what do you hope people take away from your music?
This is it's something I fear being too redundant because I give a similar answer a lot, but it really is just that they don't feel alone in whatever it is they're going through. For me, growing up, music was that thing where when you go through your first breakup or you fell in love for the first time or things like that, you you think as a teenager, no one has ever felt the way I'm feeling right now, and no one will ever feel that way, and
Mhm.
no one understands, and my parents don't understand, and whatever. And then for me, some people it might be movies or other art, but for me, I would hear a song that would be the exact thing that I wasn't able to put into words, and that would make me realize, oh, this person knows, this person has felt that way. And then you discover more songs like that, and you start to feel less and less alone, and you realize how similar the life experience is in general, no
Mhm.
matter who you are. So yeah, my hope is that people listen to my songs and they don't feel alone in their struggle and they feel seen.
Yeah, I think, it's kind of funny when you realize that as you get older, how you've gone through that, nobody understands me, but then that whole chain of events, it's funny to look back at that. Like, I'm watching my niece, she's 16 now, and probably going through some of the exact same things, and I'm thinking, I know what you're thinking right now. It's
Yeah,
perfect that way.
but you could never communicate to her that that until until we grow up and you get into your 20s or 30s and you start realizing, oh man, like my parents did all of the same stuff I did.
Yeah, like I have a 1.5-year-old daughter now, and I'm completely positive that it's gonna be later on. She's gonna be like, "Oh man, I get it."
Yeah,
Yeah, that's gonna be a fun one, I think, for sure.
definitely.
Now, how do you think music has helped you grow as a person?
I think for me, now for a portion of my life, it almost hindered me because I wasn't releasing any. Because what
Mhm,
I realized over time was writing a song was similar to maybe writing in a journal or admitting something in your own mind.
mhm,
But it wasn't till I put that song out in the world that I felt like I actually spoke the words out loud like you do in therapy or to a friend. It felt like that was finally, okay, I wrote the thing down, but if I didn't release it, I was just holding it inside.
mhm.
And then the moment I released it, it helped me come to peace with whatever I wrote that song about. If it was a positive or a negative experience, it kind of allowed me to not continue to live in that moment and and move past it in a way that was healthier.
Yeah, and it helps you write easier, I would think. Now that you can release these things, it kind of goes, "Oh, okay."
100%. And it's so I would say for me, the biggest thing is music is and has been my therapy.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of synonymous for a lot of people now, realizing that music can get you through almost anything if you let it.
Yeah, I agree.
Mhm. Now, last but not least, what motivates you to keep going down the musical road you're going down?
Oh man, there's definitely been times where when my head would be in it and my heart would be in it for the wrong reasons at times and I wanted success or to live a certain life, that's always when things would go wrong and I would realize, okay, this isn't for me. Maybe this is just never going to happen for me. And then I would toy around with that idea and I would always get to the same point of I don't see how I could live on this earth without doing music to some degree.
Mhm.
So when it got to the point of saying, well, I'm just going to start releasing music for myself, every time I would just do that and completely ignore trying to be successful in any sense of the word, that's when things would start going well.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's basically when you make a plan, someone's gonna screw it up for you, so just let it happen.
Yeah. So what's keeping me going is honestly just I've realized over time I could never stop doing music no matter what.
And I think that's probably the true moniker for someone an artist like yourself is if you can't do anything else, like, why why not just
Why?
keep going?
Yeah, exactly. So here I'm gonna be even if I have to have 12 day jobs to keep the dream alive, I'm gonna continue to play music.
Makes sense to me for sure. That's all the fun points I have written down. Is there any kind of final tidbits or words of wisdom you'd like to leave to people?
Oh man. Now I have to think for myself. I don't have you guiding me.
I gotta give
Uh
it to you at one point here.
yeah, I guess so. Um honestly, I would say a couple things we touched on already, which is even outside of social media, try your hardest to be your authentic self because the only person you're cheating at the end of the day is yourself by not being who you are. I and you will never get that time back. So all of those moments you were choosing to be who somebody else wanted you to be or who you thought you should be um, aren't wasted because maybe you're spending that time learning. But at some point, be who you are and don't be ashamed of that. That would be my major thing. And also, um, I would say use music as that crutch for I when it comes to mental health, which I write about a lot as well, people always tell people to reach out. And if
Mhm.
you've ever been in a mental health crisis, reaching out is the absolute last thing you usually are going to do or want to do.
Yeah, 100%.
So use those things that you enjoy and let them reach in. I find music is one of those things that can reach in when you're not comfortable reaching out, or movies or any type of art or entertainment in general can kind of reach into your life and maybe get you to that point where you can start reaching out.
Yeah, that's actually a really good way to put that. I like that because everyone says reach out, but
Yeah,
it's not easy sometimes.
exactly. So using those things to reach in, I think is the best path forward.
Mhm, for sure. Now you have the new music coming out. Is there any fun shows or anything people can catch you at for festival season?
So festival season, still waiting on some stuff at the moment. We've been things have been a little up in the air because last year we did the Canadian tour,
Mhm.
and this year we were hoping to go over the border and maybe some other places.
Okay.
So we're still working on as you're in the Canadian music industry, you know, you got to get visas and things like that in
Mhm.
place. So until I get those visas in place, I can't really announce any of the places I'm hoping to be, but there will definitely be at the very least. We always do a couple local shows in like the Hamilton, Toronto area in Southern Ontario here, and I hope to go back up near where you are. I played in Cornwall, Ontario, which isn't
Okay.
far from you,
Yeah,
because
it's
I've
about a
got
half-hour drive or something like that.
yeah, I've got a bunch of family there, so I'd like to be back up in the Ottawa area at some point this year.
Well, if you are around this area, for sure send me a message. I'll be out to catch the show, and I've actually
Awesome.
got teams in your area in Toronto and all that too. So if I see something pop up, I'll try to get someone out there to cover the show for sure.
Perfect. That sounds amazing, Tom.
Well, it was definitely nice to get to talk to you and kind of pick your brain a little bit and see what makes you tick for sure.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
And I'm sure we're gonna do this again. I always like to say it's nice to catch up with old friends.
100%. I'll be here whenever you want me to be.
And if you have anything you want us to send out in the world, by all means, send me a message. I'm pretty easy to access for sure.
Awesome. I appreciate that.
All right, well, we will sign off. I'll let you enjoy the rest of your day, and I think I have like 2 more interviews booked for this afternoon, so it should be a fun time talking to people.
Beautiful. I can't wait to see those episodes as well.
All right, man. Have a good one.
You too. Peace.
Bye.